Well, a lot of you probably have been eyeing one of the consoles like the PS5 or Xbox Series X. But what if I told you that for almost the same price you can get a very capable gaming PC that can display any modern games at, well, not really the same detail level or resolution as the Xbox Series X or PS5, but at a similar level and be much more versatile at the same time. So first of all, let's start with the specs. And well, the consoles both use a Zen 3 chip with 8 cores and 16 threads and a clock speed of 3.6 GHz. And the GPU is a, well, it looks like something around a 5700 XT, or power-wise the equivalent of an RTX 2070 or 2070 Super, which is pretty good for us because there are lots of new GPUs that have almost the same power but at a relatively low price also. Both consoles use 16 gigabytes of RAM, although the GPU also is using that 16 gigabytes as well. So in theory, the GPU would have access to up to 16 gigabytes, but the system also has to use some of that, and also obviously the games have to run on that as well. Storage obviously is dependent on which console you get, so the better versions both have 1 terabyte, and the Xbox Series S, the cheaper version, also has lesser hardware and less storage, but we're gonna focus on the Series X and on the PS5 and build a gaming PC pretty much equivalent to that. Starting out with the CPU, that would be, well, in theory it's a bit weaker than on the consoles with a Ryzen 5 4500, which is a 6-core and has 12 threads, is clocked a little bit higher, but is only in the Zen 2 architecture. So this might be a little bit slower in games than both of the console CPUs, but that CPU also is only 70 bucks, so you can't really complain about the power because it is that cheap. And it will basically be enough for probably anything that you are going to do with that PC, be it video editing even, or just normal multimedia things like watching videos or gaming, as I said. The graphics card we are going to use is a bit more interesting though. As I said before, in the Xbox Series X and the PS5 there's some equivalent of a 5700 XT in there, which is a 2 generations old GPU by now. But we are also going to use a GPU from the last generation. Although NVIDIA also has capable GPUs, they are, with the RTX 3060, 3050, quite a bit more expensive, and on the AMD side we can get quite a lot more power for the same price or even cheaper. This choice would be the RX 6650 XT, which is quite a powerful card, almost the same as a RTX 3060, but costs a lot less. It's only around 200 bucks, maybe somewhat more in some places, and if you get lucky, maybe a bit cheaper. But the 6650 is a bit faster than the 6600 XT, so I would definitely recommend that. Please don't go for a 4 or 6 gigabyte card. If you're going to look at a 2060 or even a 3068 gigabyte, I wouldn't really recommend that. 3068 gigabyte obviously has 8 gigabytes, but it's also more expensive and slower than the 6650. So please, I would recommend the 6650 XT. So just go for that and you will have a bit more power than the consoles. Of course, PC games are not as optimized as games on the consoles, but you may be able to get even 4K running on a lot of games without many issues. As for RAM, we are going to choose 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 MHz RAM. The reason for that is because, well, it's basically in our budget. Of course, RAM is cheap right now, so if you have the cash to spare, you could go for 32 gigabytes, which I would definitely recommend if you do some other tasks other than gaming. For example, video editing, photo editing. 32 gigabytes come in handy in that really often. So if you need to do that, maybe spend the extra, I don't know, 30 bucks on the extra 16 gigabytes. For the motherboard, we're going to use a B450 unit because B550 is quite a bit more expensive, and the B450 motherboards can be found from around 70 bucks upwards. And depending on what you find, I would recommend always choosing one with 4 RAM slots and heatsinks on both CPU VRM and SoC VRM, because then you can overclock your CPU somewhat and get a bit more out of it if you want to, or have a better upgrade path for later on if you want to go for like a 5950X when they get cheaper in like 3 or 4 years. Then you still have the possibility to upgrade to a 16 core for like 150 bucks on the used market. And you're not stuck with a totally low-end main board that's going to limit you at a 65 watts of TDP, or going to limit you at not even running the CPU at its full potential and throttling it down. So I would choose for my build the B450A or B450A Plus from Asus, but any of these motherboards I show here are possible to use. For storage, we are going to choose just a normal, either Sata SSD. You can choose a Sata SSD if you want to. There's not that much difference between Sata and PCI Express, though it can be a bit snappier. And obviously, looking at the consoles which use PCI Express Gen 4 SSDs, it would be a better equivalent using a PCI Express Gen 4 or Gen 3 SSD in the PC as well. But as I said, the difference is kind of negligible. You might notice some games load a bit faster, but that's only at a 1 to 2 second level. So that's not that huge of a difference. Although if you find one like an older Samsung 970 Evo, for example, you might find those at almost the same price as a normal SATA SSD. So if you choose that, you can obviously go for that. You'll find a good deal. Size-wise, you are probably limited to about 1 terabyte at that budget. Obviously, if you need more, you can also spend a bit more to get a terabyte SSD, or in the future just upgrade and get another one, which wouldn't be possible on a console as well. I wouldn't recommend hard drives though, because even if you just use a hard drive for game storage, loading games from a hard drive can be quite slow. And yeah, SSDs are now so cheap that even a 2 terabyte SSD in the future would be only like 60 to 70 bucks at most. So I would rather spend that, and 2 terabytes is enough to save around 20 games on there on average, I'd say. I know games are getting big now, they're often around 100 gigabytes, but 2 terabytes should be plenty for now. That's basically for the main components and on the motherboard, and now I'm going to discuss with you what to choose for power supply and case. The power supply, please don't choose a really cheap unit, because those can just blow up. You can judge the quality of a power supply on a few factors. Obviously, you can read some reviews. I wouldn't trust custom reviews on Amazon though, because those can be, they don't have any testing equipment, so you don't really know if the quality of the PSU is good. They just tell you most of the time that, well, it works, which, to be honest, even 20 or 15 bucks power supplies do, but they don't work very well and don't work very reliably, especially for a gaming system that experiences high load a lot of the time. So I would go for a reputable brand and choose a unit that has at least 80 plus bronze. This is why I went for the Be Quiet system power from a very reputable brand. So this is probably not going to fail on me. Also, here's a list on any power supplies that are decent on that price level, so you can choose any of those if that Be Quiet unit, for example, is not available in your region. As for case, well, the case is kind of on that price level. Find the cheapest you can get. maybe leave the side panel open because those cheap cases don't have that much airflow, and yeah, be done with it. You can upgrade later, and maybe if you have some cash to spare, you can obviously buy a nicer one for like 50 bucks or something. But for right now, I would recommend getting a very cheap one. There are also cheap units that are pretty good from Aerocool or Thermaltake, for example, which work pretty well. For example, the Versa series from Thermaltake. Those are, although cheap, do have pretty good ventilation if you buy 2 or 3 extra fans, which also can be had for under 5 bucks. So even then, you might get off pretty good. Most of these cases even have USB 3 at the front, so yeah, that's a bonus. And even on cases that are very, very cheap, you have that pretty often. That's basically it for the system. We are also going to build that system in a few videos and yeah, see what you can get out of it and how it compares to consoles. And for those of you who are saying, well, if I can get my console a bit cheaper for like 450 or 400 bucks, then this PC is again kind of out of my budget, correct? Well, not really, because on a console you have to pay for gaming online. That's a fact on the PlayStation as well as on the Xbox. And yes, you can get free games, but well, you can also get free games on the PC. For example, if you look at the Epic Games Store, they are giving away free games, sometimes even AAA games, even if they are older, and you can really find some gems in there. Also, prices on games on PC, because you have a more open market and are not required to buy on the separate stores of the consoles, you have a lot lower prices. So the investment at the start may be a bit higher, even if it's only like 100 bucks or something. In the future, you might get off a lot better and a lot cheaper than you might have thought. Also, obviously, a PC is upgradable as always. As I said, you can upgrade the RAM anytime if you want to. You can upgrade the CPU from the 4500 even up to the 5950X, which is a 16 core that is performing very well right now and is going to perform very well in the future because games and programs are going to use more cores the newer they get. Obviously, there would be AM5 and a newer platform out there, but that is too expensive to use right now, and the upgrade path on AM4 is still available. Obviously, in the GPU field, because of PCI Express, you don't have any problem upgrading, so you also do not have to worry there. And down the road, in 3 or 4 years, you might just plop in a new GPU, sell the old one off, and well, get way better graphics then. On the console side, you may have to buy a whole new console, and yeah, that's obviously a thing because you can spend multiple times the price of a console on that of a PC or even just a graphics card, but you can also do it in an intelligent way and just upgrade the components you have. That's basically it for the video. I hope I'll see you when we build this PC. And if you have any questions, suggestions, leave that in the comments. If you like the video, press the like button and maybe subscribe to the channel. I wish you a nice day as always, and goodbye.